Testing, testing. So let's look at solving one-step equations. And on the front side of this page, you'll notice that every equation up at the top is dealing with addition. All the equations at the bottom are dealing with subtraction. So let's just focus on solving equations in general. What is the goal? And the goal is to get the variable alone. That variable is representing an unknown number. And when we get the variable alone or isolated, we will be able to find its value. That's our goal. Okay? And every move that we make, we need to make it with that end in mind. Okay? Now, the way that we do that is we're going to use inverse operations. And we've already talked about some inverse operations this year. We've talked about how the opposite or the inverse of add is to subtract. Inverse of add is to subtract. And the inverse of subtracting is adding. Then we've got multiply. The inverse of multiply is to divide. But then the inverse of divide is multiply. We've also talked about this year, if I have an unknown number that is being squared, to find the value of that number, to undo squaring operation, we use the square root. And if there's a number that's being square rooted, we want to get rid of that square root symbol, we would use square operation. Okay, so all of those are operations that are the inverse of each other, and we're going to use those inverse operations to help us isolate or get those variables alone so we can figure out what their value is. Now we also have a golden rule in solving equations. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to both sides so that we can keep this equation balanced. Okay, so do the same operations to both sides to keep the equation balanced. Now when I say both sides, I'm talking about both sides of the equal sign. Now, let's go up here to all of these. Now, I do want to tell you, it will help you visually if you will draw a line at the equal sign. And you're going to move the number that's with the variable, because we want to get that variable by itself, and if there's a number with it, we can't figure out what its value is. So move the number with the variable. All right, so focusing on that. So I'm going to draw a line at the equal sign. Notice that with my variable, I have an add 8. Now to determine what the value of this variable n is, I'm going to use the inverse operation of add, which is to subtract. I subtracted 8 from both sides. Got to do it to both sides to keep that equation balanced. Now when I do this, a positive 8 and a negative 8 together makes 0. Bring down my n, I just keep it in its own lane. And 12 minus 8 is 4. So my missing unknown variables, that's value is 4. Repeat this process for this one. We're also going to subtract 8 again on this one. So I wanted to show you it doesn't matter if it's on the left side or the right side. I have 8 plus x, so 8 is the number that I need to eliminate. I'm going to eliminate it by subtracting 8 from both sides. So 8 minus 8 is 0. I'm going to bring down my x, and negative 2 minus 8 is negative 10. So this line is my equal sign, so negative 10 is equal to x. Draw a line at the equal sign. Identify the number that's with your variable, and this time it's negative 13. I'm going to eliminate negative 13 by adding 13 to both sides. Negative 13 plus 13 is 0, which is going to give me this variable x isolated. It's alone now. And 20 plus 13 is 33. If I substitute 33 back in for my variable up here, this is the check. I do negative 13 plus the number that I just said it was valued at, 33. I replace that for the x this time for the variable to see if this is actually true. Does it work out? Negative 13 plus 33. That does give me a positive 20 there. So yay, I did get the correct solution here. So scrolling down to the subtraction problems. My goal is still the same, to find the value of my unknown variable. I'm still going to use inverse operations. And I'm going to do whatever operation I do to one side, I'm going to do it to both sides. So in minus 19, I'm subtracting 19 from my variable, so to get rid of it, 19 to both sides, because the inverse of subtract 19 is going to add 19. That's going to eliminate those two. Negative 19 plus a positive 19 is 0. That gets me this single n isolated. And negative 29 plus a positive 19 is negative 10. Draw my line at the equal sign. I have a subtract 9 that's with the variable. Therefore, I use the inverse operation of subtract as add. I add 9 to both sides. Negative 9 plus a positive 9 eliminate each other. I'm going to bring down my variable a. It's isolated and happy now. So negative 15 plus 9 is negative 6. So negative 6 is equal to the variable a. Next, I've got a double negative here. So star this one, because this is one that is frequently confusing for students or frequently missed. So this requires you to know and understand your integer rules, that when you're subtracting a negative, you're taking away the bad things. Taking away the bad things. It's the same as adding good things. So taking away a negative, subtracting a negative, is the same thing as adding a positive. And believe it or not, to get rid of that, we're going to subtract 6 here from both sides. So m plus 6 minus 6, that leaves me with m, remains on this side, and 2 minus 6 is negative 4. And then we have this super special equation right here, and my 7 got cut off on this right there. So it's the same equation 2 different times, and that was not a mistake. That was intentional, because there's 2 different ways you can approach this, and I will show you both options. So the thing that's different about this is that we are subtracting the variable. And again, this is another one that students frequently miss. They find it confusing. So I'm going to show you this is option 1. This is one way to do it. Still going to draw the line at the equal sign. Now for some people, the method that works for their brains is they're going to add the h to both sides because they don't want to deal with a negative variable. Now when I add h here to this negative h, those two are eliminated. Negative 17 is left. And right here, I cannot combine negative 7 plus h. That's why I put h kind of over here in its own lane. So I have negative 7 plus a positive h. Now from there, you still got to get rid of this number that's with the variable. So you could add 7 to both sides. This gets eliminated. I'm left with h, the variable, is equal to negative 10. So that's one way to do it. Option 2, this other way that we could do this, solve this equation. I'm going to draw my line at my equal sign here. Is we could just go ahead and say, okay, I know that I need to get rid of this negative 17 that's with my variable. So I'm going to add 17 to both sides, which means I'll be left with, this is where people get messed up. They drop that negative that's with your variable. And that's an easy mistake to make. So you have a negative h variable, and then on the other side of the equal sign you have negative 7 plus positive 17, and this is equal to a positive 10. You can't leave a negative with your variable. You want a single positive variable. So your next step here, and you have some options, you could either multiply by negative 1 or divide by negative 1. The outcomes will be the same. Personally, I find that students are better with multiplying than they are with dividing. So multiply both sides by negative 1, and h will be positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. And 10 times negative 1 is a negative 10. And if you look and you compare, we got the same answer using both options. And that's what I have for solving one-step addition and subtraction equations. Thanks for watching.